the lawsuit filed against Bill 62. Catherine McKenzie is a partner with IMK, who's the legal firm that has filed this lawsuit. And Razia Hamidi is the Montreal spokesperson with the National Council of Canadian Muslim, one of the groups that is behind the lawsuit. So first of all, if you guys could break down, what does this lawsuit say? What are you fighting?
So what we're looking for is to suspend the operation or in the short term and ultimately have it declared invalid. Section 10 of the law, which is the operative section, which says basically that if you want to receive services from the government, you have to uncover your face for the length of time you receive the service. And then on the other side, that you can't work for any government entity, including schools that receive subsidies, if you have your face covered.
And you're stating that this is unconstitutional, the Canadian and the Quebec Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Correct. So we think that it violates both the Canadian and Quebec charters, both in intrusion and freedom of religion, and also in the equality provisions in those charters.
The Quebec government, though, has been very adamant that they say they worded this law in a very particular fashion to avoid a lawsuit, and they think they're adamant. They think this is legal. Razia, I want to bring you into this. What is your take on that and the wording of this law? And the Quebec government's point that, hey, this is going to stand.
Well, I think our decision makers and Premier in this specific example are paying lip service to human rights. There hasn't been an acknowledgement of the consequences that this will have on the individuals. There's been a lack of humanizing the women that are going to face the consequences of this bill coming into action. And the reason we launched this lawsuit, why NCCM and the CCLA are really adamant about this, is to protect the human rights that are being violated. We're continuing to see a rise every time that Muslims and Islam are mentioned in the media, and such bills only embolden. There's perpetrators right here in Quebec. We have a Facebook group. The translation is, the Lone Wolf, and they have 43,000 followers on Facebook. Right, so it's really interesting that the Premier would say he's just playing it so relaxed when he doesn't realize the consequences of this bill, and we're already seeing that come out in spike of hate crimes with women who face the niqab and the personal challenges they're facing in their day-to-day.
Yeah, so talk to us about some of that, because Walda Naili, who is a woman who wears a niqab, is involved in this lawsuit, and she's talking about just how much her life has changed since this has been introduced.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, she said in the press conference yesterday, and she said that before, that she feels scared anytime she has to leave her home right now, and she's concerned about when she needs to seek services, if she has to go see her doctor, if she has to go talk to a government official. When she went to vote last week, she was worried about what was going to happen. And, we don't think that that's justified in our society, that those concerns are real for them, and the concern that the law is trying to address, we don't think exists.
Catherine, is there any way to tweak this law so that it is palatable, or is this a failed bill from the start, top to bottom?
Well, they passed a blanket prohibition. So it's not limited only to security purposes. It's a blanket prohibition. And so I'm not going to tell them how to legislate to fix their law if there was a way, obviously. But the way that it's passed now, we just don't think that it passes constitutional scrutiny.
I mean, the Justice Minister has said basically that there's no kind of reprimandation if this law isn't enforced, and there's no consequences if you break the law. So why is it important for you to still fight this bill, even if it could be completely ignored, technically?
Well, it could be ignored, but that doesn't mean it will be ignored. And I don't think that's true, that there's no consequence. If you're denied a service, if you don't even seek the service because you're scared about how it's going to impact you, and you're faced with this choice of actually exercising your sincerely held religious belief or getting a service, then of course you've suffered. So it's true that there's no criminal sanction for the breach, but that doesn't mean that there are no consequences.
Razia, what do you feel about challenges to religion? Did you want to add something first to that point?
I just wanted to say that, we've been bringing up this point. It's a made-up problem with a made-up solution. Right. There have been no instances of women who wear the burqa or, face veil that have denied, a verification of their identity. They've always obliged, and we continue to see them, the women that have spoken out in interviews, we've seen them attest that they will always cooperate. So it once again begs the question, why is this law even being put
And we're talking about also a very small number of people who wear the niqab or burqa in Quebec.
And it came up in the municipal campaign as well. Razia, what I want to ask you about, is the targeting not only of your religion, but religions in general. Whether it comes to this bill, Bill 62, the Governor General last week made some headlines in a speech that she did that a lot of people said, mocked religion and spirituality and even mocked astrologers. Do you feel that religion on all fronts is sort of coming under attack? And how does that make you feel as someone of faith?
I don't believe that it's coming under attack. I think it's used to fulfill a certain agenda. We do see that, I think, in the circle of politics more so than necessarily the public sphere. So I do think it just gains headlines and traction, and it's often pushed along that side. But in the public discourse, I think in community activism, I don't think that's an issue. I think, we embrace those differences. We can't deny the fact that racism still is prevalent, but I don't believe it's on the way out.
Let's go back to the legal technicalities of this. I guess another thing that the Justice Minister hasn't ruled out is using the notwithstanding clause. Is this something that's worrying you? Is this why you're also filing this lawsuit now?
Well, I mean, we're filing it now because the law is enforced immediately and it's having immediate consequences on people. Using the notwithstanding clause is a big choice for a government to make. It's only been used a few times. And it can send a chilling signal, right? Because it's a recognition that, in fact, we are violating your rights, but we're going to legislate anyway. So we'll see if they actually take that step, and we'll deal with the consequences if they do. And in the meantime, we're just trying to move ahead with our case and address the bill as it stands right now.
And just quickly, the next steps, you're going to be in court next Wednesday?
Yeah, so we have a first court date next Wednesday where we hope to be heard, if a judge is available, to suspend the effect of the law pending the adjudication of our case.
All right. Well, we'll be following this case closely. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us.